Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to return to the subject of HexOS. I told you I'd keep an eye on it, didn't I? Right now it's a little over 6 months since it was made available for people to try out via that early licensing there. It's currently available at $199. I think the full retail price is going to be $299 when it hits the full versioning. But I wanted to talk about all the little updates that have happened in the background and talk about the rest of the roadmap going into Q3, maybe even a little bit on Q4 and everything we know about it, because a lot of you have been in touch to ask about, is it worth still holding out for this or jumping on early doors while it's cheaper? So not that I would like to do it this way, but I'm going to have to start this video with a bit of a bummer note, and that is that right now there is a Q2 update coming that hasn't quite arrived yet in the time for this. And I debated long and hard about whether to make a 6-month update video about this project right now. But a lot of you are asking about when I was going to make this, so I thought I'd put this out. And when the Q2 update does roll out, I'll look into it, and if it's significant enough, then we'll make a follow-up video to this one. But it's worth highlighting that because of that, a lot of the sizable, visible changes for HexOS users right now is very little different. From what I understand, one of the biggest hurdles or bigger parameters they have to factor in is that updating HexOS has to be in line with, or at least ever so slightly after, major updates in TrueNAS. So the result is that some bigger updates may be being delayed for stability and change, and others may be because they are being developed with newer updates, stable updates for TrueNAS. So again, there's a lot of push and pull there, but probably one of the biggest things that has come up, at least within the last month or so, is AnyRAID. Now, AnyRAID is a flexible RAID configuration that's in very early development over at Clara Systems and was actually backed financially by SCHEC, by HexOS. Now that sounds weird, doesn't it? After everything we've discussed about with HexOS. I've done a whole dedicated video, by the way, on AnyRAID, but long story short, when they did the early kind of shared early license pricing, there was a March update on HexOS's forum where they were detailing that John there was reporting that they saw sales of over 25,000 licenses there, and it allowed them to get a huge injection of capital of which they weren't really anticipating at that point. It allowed them to speed up a lot of their development plans and move things that were for much, much later to a lot earlier than they were anticipating, which is good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in a Q2 or Q3 update. But the big story here is they took some of that capital and invested it into the development of AnyRAID. Now, why is that significant? AnyRAID is a flexible RAID configuration comparable to that of Synology Hybrid RAID or TerraMaster T-RAID there, but built for ZFS, taking advantage of a new way of data layouts across drives where data is instead being on flexible blocks, which are then managed by ZFS logged there in the background. It's actually broken the entire drives into 64 gigabyte chunks and then uses traditional parity to a point to pair those up together, allowing for more flexible drive deployment. Again, very early days, and therefore it's not something that we're going to see soon, and therefore we can give credit and credence to SCHEC for their investment and backing of that project, but it doesn't really transform right now into a 6-month update. I just wanted to add that in here because although it isn't a tremendous benefit you can feel right now with HexOS, it is something that clearly they're working in parallel with during that development. As mentioned, some of the changes that are coming in that Q2 update, some of which being referenced in Q3, are ones that we've heard them talk about, but we're not really seeing right now. So if I go through some of the roadmap improvements there, number one, during the setup and initialization, previously it was, and still is currently, fixed RAID configuration. It creates it by default, creates that one disparity. They're saying they're going to allow for a manual RAID configuration for those that choose to have it. I know that seems slightly counterintuitive to the whole point of HexOS simplifying things significantly, but there are users that want to have that simplified backend but wanted that option added in. Apparently that is going to make it into it. That extends, by the way, to manually assigning individual drives there and going ahead and finding the device manually on the local area network, because a lot of users that were using the automated scanning there in the WebGUI tool are having difficulty finding their devices for a myriad of reasons when they knew the IP manually. So at least having that option is good. And as long as it's there but not front facing, I think that's a good compromise for at least what this OS is trying to achieve. And although currently in HexOS you can't adopt existing ZFS pools from your existing TrueNAS setup, they did state that they are down the road towards being able to adopt existing ZFS pools into HexOS that are already there, allowing you to utilize HexOS on an existing ZFS pool filled setup. Another change, which again, giving them the slight benefit of the doubt here, they couldn't really know until they had widespread feedback from active users, is to do with that health card. On the face of it, a good idea, giving you the actual information about your system, but eventually you know the contents of your system, or what you want is the equivalent of notifications and more. So they're swapping out the health card for an activity card, which will allow you to get more real-time, dynamic and relevant native information to the area of the system that you have to be looking in. That is still in active development right now. Unfortunately, currently you're not able to update the app freely and easily on a one-click as you would like. You still have to update the system via the TrueNAS GUI using that parallel button that takes you out of HexOS and back into TrueNAS there. So again, hopefully that is something that will be remedied within the next update or two. As I've said before, I'm making this video now because it's already later than I was hoping for to make a 6-month later video. And if the Q2 update is significant enough, I will definitely make its own dedicated video to see just how many of these features have actually made it into the fold. But for now, let's talk about some of the other roadmapped features that have been discussed for a Q3 or Q4 update. Now, I include these not because I think they're going to be in the Q2 update, that would be tremendously unfair, but I include them because HexOS say that these are on the roadmap for Q3 and hopefully going into Q4 there, and by adding them in this video, we can talk about them in another 3 to 6 months and see if they have hit those marks. Number one, I know some of you have probably already typed it into the comments, there is still no local client.
What a bunch of bastards.
You still can't access the device via a local Windows or Mac client. And I know for a lot of users, that is still very much a deal breaker when dealing with this system. And unfortunately, that isn't something that's available right now. And they are saying that is somewhere further down the road on that road towards version 1.0. Next up, further curated apps. So when HexOS first rolled out, although you had access to a containerized store of applications there, something you could already do in TrueNAS Core, Plex and Image allowed users to be able to one-click install those applications with the pre-designated folder and all of the messy stuff that you would normally have to do for a container already pre-done for you there. Now, notwithstanding that they are saying that the next application that's going to be added to that curated list is Jellyfin, and it is also going to be exacerbated and sped up as they get to grips with more apps, and therefore it won't just be a trickle of one by one. But on top of that, they're going to be going down the road of curated template. So how much of this is going to be their own app development or the application developers themselves coming out with the curated folders based on, you know, the best default layouts for them, or community input? They're saying that hopefully in the Q3 update, they aim to have curated apps via that one installation to allow you to go, right, I want this application with these folders, and therefore with that community input, presumably that will speed up, or community and application creators themselves input, speed up the process of more applications being added to that one-click database. And furthermore, in the Q3 update, they're saying that new activity card will also highlight when a new update is available for those apps and allow you to update them. Something that turnkey NAS solutions have had for a very long time, but something that's very difficult to translate over because of the security and granular nature of TrueNAS there. They're saying HexOS in the Q3 update will have that one-click update for that containerized application set up. At the moment, you still need to go in manually via the TrueNAS Core GUI in order to do that. Further to the Q3 update, there's also going to be enhanced folder creation features. Now, at the moment, when you create folders within HexOS, it's frankly quite basic, and they're saying in the Q3 update it's going to allow you to do encrypted folders, it's going to allow you to do designated backup folders, so again for things like Mutability and snapshots, folders where you need those to be, I would say, heavily defended, or at the very least heavily out of the way of where someone with stupid fingers could actually do some damage, and that's coming in a Q3 update. I appreciate a lot of these things are very, very difficult when you're building on top of a rigid, you know, stable but arguably immovable object that is ZFS and TrueNAS there, but these are still a Q3 update, and there are things I think a lot of users were hoping to see in that Q2 update there. Now, as this video draws to a close, I want to talk about some of the things that weren't in the Q2 or Q3 update that, if HexOS is watching this video, I would kind of like to see added to that quality of life stuff. And I appreciate some of these are bigger jobs than others, but I do think if you're aiming towards user-friendly kind of NAS operating system comparable to that of Turnkey, you need these things. Number one, with the folder stuff, it's one thing to add curated folders, but I still don't have a file folder manager. Now, some might argue I could go into the App Center and find the file folder manager here so I could access things natively in the web browser, but that feels to me on a turnkey NAS kind of comparative level, if you're going to go down the route of trying to make TrueNAS chewable, and particularly for a paid platform, I would say immediately I would want to be able to access file folder in a file folder manager within the web browser. That's still something I don't have here. Another thing, and again, there is an argument, this is more aimed at the technical, but at the same time, I do think it's something worth discussing. Say, for example, these two drives I put in here. Now, yes, these are different capacities. I totally get it. And therefore, trying to create them into a pool would have been problematic. Would have been nice to be able to add that as a separate pool, something that has been discussed, by the way, on the roadmap. That's not my point. My point is this drive here already has partitions on it. Now, I can go into TrueNAS, I can navigate TrueNAS, and then from there, I can actually completely eradicate and completely erase all of those partitions. I have got no way to format this drive in here. I'm not talking secure erase. I am talking just formatting the drive and having it ready for the storage pool, because sometimes pre-existing VDEV and just general ZFS information on the drive will stop me being able to add it to a pool. It was something that came up several times in the forums. So I think the ability to just be able to format a drive within this GUI isn't that technical an ask, and I'd like to see that added as one of the many quality of life or fixed improvements in those updates. I mean, hell, over here I can delete the whole storage pool if I choose to, and I can view the individual drives and even expand the RAID if I choose to by adding more drives, but I can't go ahead and just format one individual drive. That feels like a quality of life add-on if you're going to go down the road of allowing people to manually add IPs and have a little doorway there that allows them to manually select the drive configuration. So you've got that either or set up there, that AB user giving me the ability to delete a drive is the least you could do. That said, before we go back to the studio, I will say straight away, something I didn't give them enough credit for early doors. I like the network manager on this. I thought it after I made my last video, but right now, it's super easy right now to be able to configure it, and the options are there. They've simplified it to the bare bones of what needs to be done, and it's presented in the most user-friendly way I've ever seen this presented. Sorry, and before I forget, again, if you're listening, HexOS, multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, one-time password, call it what you want. Please give me the ability to add that feature to this. I think we can all agree that two-factor authentication has now transcended the tech world and is wildly and widely available on domestic level appliances. So I think having that baked in here, it needs to arrive, I would say, before version 1.0 rolls out.
But circling back to that Q2 update there, the rest of it is really made up of bug fixes and quality of life improvements as detailed on a recent blog post, where it's things like allowing for longer usernames and system names than 8 characters, allowing you to actually see the password as it's being entered. They're small quality of life things. And it sounds more and more that what HexOS is trying to do is once again nail down the foundations as solidly as possible and then build on top of them. What does that mean in real terms? It means that right now, the difference between backing this and backing this in 6 months, if it's going to still be $199 or if there might even be another Black Friday deal, I would still recommend holding out on this software because I think it's going to remain that price for a wee while longer, because it's still, to me, nowhere near version 1.0. There is still a lack of that client application that people have been requesting. And although things like AnyRAID are genuinely exciting, it also has to be added that a lot of the features and improvements seem to be a little bit more gainful in that Q3 promised update. And I think right now, if you're not in any rush, I would still hold out a wee bit longer. I do still have high hopes for HexOS, and I do think there is a demanding market for this, but there are still some holes that need to be filled there in terms of what this overarching package can be for users that have been considering TrueNAS, but were put off by the intimidating nature of it, which is sort of the raison d'etre of HexOS overall. I will see you in about 3 to 6 months when we do our next big update, or almost certainly when the Q2 update rolls out. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.